Bomb Squad is a real-time cooperative game for 2 to 6 players, designed by Dan Keltner and David Short, and published by Tasty Minstrel Games. In Bomb Squad, terrorists have infiltrated the city, taken over a building, captured hostages, and set up bombs that are counting down, and have threatened to blow up the building if we don't provide a ransom. You as players have been brought in as the Bomb Squad team to work together to control the bomb disposal robot that will be navigating through the building to save the hostages and disarm the bombs before they explode and destroy the building. So, how do you work together to control the robot? This is done through the instruction cards. Each player will have a hand of these cards, and each instruction card is one of 4 different action types that the robot can perform: move, open doors, rescue hostages, or disarm bombs. Each type of instruction card comes in 3 different colors: red, corresponding to level 1 cards, yellow for level 2 cards, and blue for level 3. Move cards move the robot a number of spaces in a straight line equal to the level of the card. So a red move card moves the robot 1 space, a yellow moves it 2 spaces, and a blue moves it 3. For Felix, the standard robot, all these moves need to be in an orthogonal direction, not diagonal. Note that the robot needs to perform the full movement of the card, and the player operating the robot can decide at runtime which direction to perform each movement card. You don't have to worry about rotation or facing of the robot. If the robot is ever in a place where it can't actually complete the full movement on the card because of walls or obstacles blocking the way, then the robot will stay in place, not do a partial amount of movement, and will end up using extra battery trying to process this error. More on this later when we talk about managing the robot's battery levels. Note that all hostages and bombs are considered obstacles for the robot, so it can't move on those spaces. The robot cannot run over the hostages or ram into the bombs. The next type of action card is an open door card. There are level 1 doors, level 2 doors, and level 3 doors in the building, along with corresponding instruction cards in the deck. To open a door, the robot has to be orthogonally adjacent to the door, and the right open door instruction card needs to be played to open that type of door, as shown by the number and color on the instruction card matching the color and number of the door token on the board. Before you can open a door of a specific level and color in the building, the robot needs to have already rescued at least 1 hostage of that color. Hostages have key cards for areas of the building that they can access, and the robot needs to use that to be able to unlock and open those doors. For example, here, once this red level 1 hostage has been rescued, now the robot can open any red doors throughout the rest of the building. And the same applies for yellow hostages with yellow doors, and so on. When doors or other tokens on the board are activated, you simply remove that token from the board. Rescue hostage cards are the next type, and again the basic robot Felix needs to be orthogonally adjacent to the hostage, and the right level of rescue hostage card needs to be played to match the level of hostage shown on the token. The final type of instruction card is the disarm bomb card, and the same rules apply for these as was mentioned for open door and rescue hostage cards. The deck consists of 54 instruction cards, with half of them being red, 1/3 yellow, and the remaining 1/6 blue. So now that you know about the cards, what can you do on your turn? Like I mentioned earlier, this game is counting down in real time, with the time limits based on the timers for each of the bombs that are set up in this building. This is established as part of the mission setup description at the beginning of each mission. However, within that real-time countdown, each player is going to choose to perform exactly 1 of 4 available actions. After completing that action, the next player sitting clockwise will have a turn and will again choose from 1 of those 4 available actions. The first type of action that a player can perform is related to how players hold their hand of cards, and is a key part of the cooperative element of the game. Players all hold their hand of cards facing outwards, so you don't know what cards you have in your hand, but all of your other teammates can see them. So they're going to need to give you intel about the cards in your hands, so you know which ones are the right ones to play for the robot to perform.
So the first type of action is a give intel action. In this action, you select one other player and you give them intel about cards in their hand, following the rules for providing intel. First, you must select all the cards in their hand that share a common characteristic, such as the color or the action type. And then you point out those cards to them, telling them about the characteristic that they share. For example, you could point at this, and this card and say, these three cards are all red or level 1 cards. Or, these cards here and here are move cards. Note that you have to point out all cards in their hand that have that characteristic, not only some of those cards. After someone else gives you a clue, you can feel free to rearrange the cards in your hand however you wish to help you keep track of the intel you have been given. For example, I could move these three red cards together off to the left of my hand. As a reminder, each instruction card has two characteristics. So if one other player has told you these cards are red, and then subsequently another player gave you intel and told you that these cards are move cards, now you know both things about this card and know that it is a red, move one space card. The second type of action that you can perform is to play a card from your hand to the programming slots for the robot. After you've been given some intel about a card in your hand, you simply announce on your turn that for your action you are going to play the card, and then you place it into the first available slot in the programming cards row under the robot control frame. If you are playing Training Mission Alpha, you play the cards face up. Otherwise, the standard approach is to play the cards face down, after showing all the other players what card you are playing. You then draw a card from the draw pile to fill your hand back up to your hand size, which is based on the number of players. The third type of action you can perform on your turn is to activate the robot. Let's say that a number of turns have happened, intel has been given, and these cards have been played. It is now your turn, and you announce that you're going to activate the robot for your action. This means that you're going to perform some steps and then send the instructions to the robot to have it execute them. The first thing that happens during activation is that if there are 5 or fewer cards that have been programmed, you can optionally discard one of them. You will want to do this if one of the cards is a mistake, and the robot will not be able to actually perform that action. For example, if the team didn't play enough movement to reach this red level 1 door, you would want to discard this red open door instruction card. This is because the robot will use up 2 extra battery every time it tries to process an error for an action it cannot actually perform. If there are 6 or 7 cards programmed, you lose the ability to discard one of these cards. But the flip side is that you're using the robot's battery much more efficiently, since the battery usage for an activation maxes out at 8 battery with 5 instruction cards, and the 6th and 7th cards don't use any additional battery. So if you did this full 7 card activation, you would be paying 8 battery to perform 7 actions, versus paying 8 battery to perform 5 action cards if you had activated earlier. So there's a trade-off between more flexibility and error recovery when you activate early versus more efficient battery usage when you activate later. The second thing you can do during activation is to rearrange the cards however you wish before sending these instructions to the robot. This means that you don't have to play the cards in the exact sequence of steps you desire to operate the robot. So for this example, since you know that you need to go ahead and rescue that level 1 hostage, if it is one of the initial cards in your hand, you could play it early, knowing that you and your team won't activate the robot until you've played the additional move cards that are needed to reach that hostage. So for this example, we would arrange the cards like this. Now, you reduce the main battery level based on the number of instruction cards that have been programmed. So for this robot, we would go down from the starting level of 12 down to 5. And now we have the robot perform each of the instruction card actions. So it would move here, rescue the hostage, and then move here. Note that if you do a full activation, playing the 7th card to fill the last programming slot, then that action auto-activates the robot, and the player who played that 7th card will then perform the steps to activate the robot without needing to take a separate activate action. So we just showed how the robot uses battery, so the last type of action you can perform on a turn is to recharge the robot's main battery, and that is done with the discard action. To perform this action, you take one card from your hand and declare that you are discarding it to recharge battery. But before you place it face up on the discard pile, you call out one or two of the characteristics of the card, and you'll be recharging 1 or 2 battery levels based on how correct you are. So for example, I could say I'm discarding this red card, and since I was correct, we recharge 1 battery level. If I had said I'm discarding this red move card, then we would have recharged 2 battery levels. However, you must be entirely correct in every characteristic you say in order to recharge any battery level. So if I had said I was discarding a red open door card, we would have recharged 0 battery. There's no partial credit. Note that there is also a reserve battery for the robot. So if the main battery ever goes to 0, you then tap into the reserve battery levels. So for example here, if your main battery started at 5 and then you activated the robot with this full 7 card activation, you would move the main battery down to 0 and then lower the reserve battery by the remaining amount of 3. Reserve batteries can never be recharged, and using reserve battery will lower your score for the mission, which will be discussed later in the scoring session. After discarding, you then draw a card from the draw pile to refill back up to your hand size. If you ever happen to see a card from your hand by mistake, no worries. Simply place it in the discard pile and draw a new replacement card. If the draw pile runs out, simply flip over the discard pile to form a new face-down draw pile. No need to reshuffle. The game will end in one of several ways. Players fail the mission if either any bomb detonates destroying the building, or if the main and reserve batteries are reduced to 0, then the robot powers down and can't perform any additional actions. Players successfully complete the mission if they disarm all the bombs before their times expire. There is a score for each mission to determine how well the team met the objectives. The team will receive a perfect score if they save all hostages and disarm all bombs in time without using any reserve battery. Scoring is calculated as follows: 2 times the face value for any hostage and bomb tokens that were removed from the building, 1 point for any hostage tokens still in the building, 5 points for disarming all bombs, and -1 point for each reserve battery level used. For example here, the value of all the rescued hostages and disarmed bombs is 12, times 2 is 24. 2 hostages weren't rescued and remain in the building for 2 points. All bombs were disarmed in time for another 5 points, and 2 reserve batteries were used for -2 points. This results in a score of 29, which is 3 stars on the 5-star scale to rate your performance. Okay, so now that you know how to play the game, let's talk about setting up a mission. First thing you need to do is select a mission. There are 2 training missions at the beginning of the campaign where you are learning how to operate the robot at the Bomb Squad Academy. After that, you graduate and are on the force for real, and will go through a number of missions in the campaign. Note that for the regular missions, you can also decide between the standard and epic difficulty levels. Epic adds more objectives which are highlighted on the mission layout in red. In addition, you can always create your own missions using the modular building tiles and tokens. Second, set up the building tiles. The selected mission will show the layout of the building for this mission. Find the necessary building tiles, which are marked in the lower right corner by number and letter, and lay them out in the middle of the table as shown on the mission. Then, set up the robot control frame around the building tiles. Later missions have larger 2x2 building layouts, and for those missions you'll need to use the included frame extension pieces. Next, place the tokens. The mission will show the locations of the bombs, hostages, and doors in the building. Place the corresponding tokens on the spaces indicated. If playing the epic level, also place the tokens highlighted by a red border. Place the robot at the starting location as indicated by the mission description. Next, select the robot you will use for the mission. A suggested robot is shown on each mission description, and place the robot card next to the control frame. Set the timer. The mission description shows the detonation time for each bomb, and set the timer to the time indicated for the first bomb, or bomb A. Next, set the starting battery levels. Place the battery cell markers on the starting level spots for the main and reserve batteries as indicated on the robot card. Now you can select role cards. Once you have completed the training missions, you graduate and are given your first assignments with the bomb squad. Each player can choose a role card, or they can be randomly assigned. Next, determine the start player by whatever means desired. Shuffle the instruction cards and deal each player their initial cards, with the hand size based on the number of players. Reminder, when you pick up your cards, make sure your cards are facing away from you. And finally, when you're ready, start the timer to begin. The last part of this training will talk about the different types of roles and robots available in the game. There is a base set of components included in the game, and depending on funding of the Kickstarter campaign, additional roles, robots, missions, and other components may be added. Roles come in 3 basic types: purple or standard, green for activation roles, and blue are advanced roles. Standard roles provide abilities that you can use throughout the game, such as the disposal expert, who can discard an additional card from the control frame when activating on her turn. Activation roles are powerful but only provide a benefit if you are the one activating the robot on your turn. For example, the technician allows you to disarm any bomb with any type of bomb card when activating on your turn. Advanced roles provide other benefits in various aspects of the game. One example is the Sergeant role, that allows you to play the top card of the discard pile to the next available programming slot, instead of playing a card from your hand. In addition to the roles, there are different types of robots available in Bomb Squad. Felix, the standard robot, moves and activates objects in orthogonal directions. His main battery starts at 12, with a max of 16, and has a reserve battery level of 8. Octotread can move and activate objects in diagonal directions, although it can't move or activate objects through solid intersections. Its main battery starts at 8 with a maximum of 12, but only has a reserve battery of 2. And there you have it. You're all trained up and ready to start your first mission. So come on board to the squad, control the robot, save the hostages, and disarm the bombs as we work to catch up with the terrorists.